At exactly 11:41 p.m., the screaming began. Not the normal kind of yelling you sometimes hear in quiet neighborhoods. Not drunk laughter or a couple arguing on the patio. This was pure panic. The kind of screaming that makes people open their windows and turn on their porch lights. I was standing at my kitchen window when it happened. From there, I had a perfect view of my neighbor's backyard. And what I saw under their porch light looked completely insane. 6 people were running around like their house had just caught fire. One was scrubbing his arms with a garden hose. Another was frantically wiping his face with a towel. A teenage girl was screaming while staring at her hands like she'd just seen a ghost. And every single one of them was glowing. Bright electric blue. From head to toe. I leaned against the counter, slowly sipping my beer. Then I quietly said to myself, "Yeah, that's about right." Because for 4 months, those same people had been using my pool like it belonged to them. Beer cans. Cigarette butts. Food wrappers. Even worse things floating in the water that I don't even want to describe. Every single morning I would walk outside expecting the peaceful pool I paid $32,000 to install. Instead I'd find a disaster. The smell alone was enough to ruin your appetite. Warm chlorine mixed with cheap beer and sunscreen. Sometimes the water would even look cloudy. One morning I found 3 empty pizza boxes floating in the shallow end. Another time? Someone had thrown a pair of muddy sneakers into the pool like it was a trash can. But the worst discovery happened on a Monday morning. I reached into the skimmer basket to clean the filter. And I pulled out 2 used condoms. Floating there like disgusting jellyfish. I actually gagged. That was the moment I knew something had to change. But the real problem wasn't just the trespassing. The real problem was who was doing it. My neighbor. The president of the neighborhood HOA. Her name was Linda Carver. Age 51. Real estate agent. White Mercedes SUV. And the kind of personality that made people lower their voices when she walked by. She had been running the Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association for almost 7 years. 7 years of telling people how tall their grass could be. 7 years of measuring fences. 7 years of sending violation letters for things like improper garbage bin alignment. She fined my friend Carlos down the street $250 because his Christmas lights were still up on January 3rd. 3 days after New Year's. But somehow her own backyard parties lasted until 2 in the morning. Music blasting. People drinking. Teenagers jumping into my pool. Because our properties shared a fence line. And apparently in Linda Carver's mind, that meant my pool was community property. The first time I confronted her, she gave me a smile so fake it looked painful. "Oh Mark," she said in that syrupy HOA voice. "I'm sure it was just the kids cooling off. It's a hot neighborhood. Cooling off. In my pool. Without asking." The next morning, a violation notice appeared taped to my front door. Excessive water noise after quiet hours. $200 fine. For my own pool. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just a rude neighbor. This was someone who believed the rules didn't apply to her. And people like that? They only learn one way. The hard way. So I did what any electrician with too much patience and a lot of anger would do. I started documenting everything. First came the cameras. 4 of them. High definition. Night vision. Motion detection. I installed them over one long weekend. By Monday night they were already catching movement. Shadows jumping into the water at 1:13 a.m. Music playing. Beer bottles clinking. People laughing like they owned the place. But I needed more than shadows. I needed proof. Clear. Undeniable. Something no HOA meeting could spin into a lie. That's when I discovered something interesting during a late-night internet search. A special pool tracing dye used by professionals. Harmless. Colorless in water. But once it touched human skin, it stuck. And under light, it glowed. Bright. Unmissable. Impossible to explain away. I ordered a bottle that same night. $30. Delivered 2 days later. The powder looked harmless enough. Like very fine sugar. But once it dissolved into water, anyone swimming in that pool would carry the evidence with them. 4 days. Maybe weeks. I waited patiently for the right night. And last night was perfect. Because Linda Carver hosted one of her famous Friday wine nights. Half the neighborhood drinking cheap Merlot and pretending they liked each other. By 10:30 p.m., most people had gone home. By 11 p.m., the music got louder. By 11:15 p.m., I saw the back gate open. And 6 familiar figures slipped through the shadows. Linda. Her husband Greg. Their son Tyler. And 3 of Tyler's friends. They climbed my fence like they'd done it 100 times before. They turned on my pool lights. They turned on a Bluetooth speaker. And then they jumped in. Laughing. Drinking. Splashing like a group of drunk raccoons. I watched the whole thing from my kitchen window. Because by then, the trap was already set. 40 minutes later they climbed out of the pool. Everything seemed normal. Until Tyler stepped under the porch light. That's when the screaming started. Tyler was the first one to notice. He stepped under the porch light, laughing, shaking water out of his hair. Then he froze. Guys? His voice sounded confused. Not scared yet. Just confused. He slowly lifted his hands in front of his face. Under the yellow porch light, his skin was glowing. Not slightly. Not faintly. It looked like someone had painted him with electric blue neon. "What the hell?" he said. Then Linda stepped forward. "Stop being dramatic, Tyler." But the moment she saw his arms, she stopped talking. Because the same color was spreading across her own skin. Her hands. Her legs. Even her face. All glowing blue. Greg stared down at himself. "Linda. I think something's wrong." The panic started immediately. Tyler's friends began shouting. "What is this? My arms are glowing. Is this chlorine or something?" Linda grabbed the garden hose from the wall and turned it on full blast. Cold water sprayed everywhere as she started scrubbing her arms like she was trying to remove paint. But the glow didn't disappear. If anything, it got brighter. That's when the screaming started. The kind that wakes neighbors. Lights began turning on all over the street. Front doors opened. People stepped outside. And there, under Linda Carver's patio light, the HOA president and her entire family looked like radioactive Smurfs. I quietly picked up my phone and started recording from my kitchen window. Because moments like this, you only get them once. Tyler grabbed a towel and rubbed his face violently. "It's not coming off." One of his friends shouted. "Dude, my neck is glowing." Another kid ran toward their house yelling. "Get soap. Get soap." Linda was furious. "This is chemicals," she screamed. "Someone put chemicals in the pool." I raised my eyebrow at that. Technically, she wasn't wrong. But she also wasn't supposed to be in my pool. Across the street, Mr. Alvarez stepped outside wearing slippers and a robe. "What's going on over there?" Then he saw them. He blinked. "Why are they glowing?" More neighbors came out. Phones appeared. People started filming. And that's when things got really bad for Linda. Because the internet loves 2 things. Drama. And glowing idiots. Within minutes someone posted a video on the neighborhood Facebook group. Title: "Why is the HOA president glowing?" The comments exploded immediately. Is this a prank? Did someone dump paint in their pool? Why are they in Mark's backyard? That last question was the important one. Because everyone in Pinewood Heights knew something about Linda. They just didn't talk about it openly. But now people were seeing it live. Linda suddenly realized how many people were watching. "Everyone go inside," she yelled. "Now." But the damage was done. Phones were recording. People were laughing. Tyler's friend Jake tried a different solution. He grabbed dish soap from the outdoor sink and started scrubbing his arms. Nothing changed. The blue glow stayed. Bright. Permanent. One of the teenage girls from the house next door whispered loudly to her mom. "They look like Avatar characters." Her mom tried not to laugh. Linda was losing control. She grabbed her phone and started dialing someone. "Hello? Yes, I need police here immediately." Pause. "Yes, someone poisoned my family." I nearly choked on my drink when I heard that. Poisoned. That was a new one. 15 minutes later, a patrol car rolled into the neighborhood. Red and blue lights flashed across houses. Officer Daniels stepped out. He was a tall guy in his late 30s who had probably expected a normal Friday night call. Noise complaint. Parking dispute. Something boring. Instead, he walked into a scene where 6 glowing people were standing in a backyard yelling at each other. He stopped for a second. Then slowly asked, "What happened here?" Linda pointed dramatically toward my house. "That man poisoned our pool." Officer Daniels looked at her. Then looked at the glowing group. Then looked at the fence between our yards. "Your pool?" he asked. Linda hesitated. "Community pool access." Officer Daniels raised one eyebrow. "I'm pretty sure that's a private residential pool." That was my cue. I stepped out my back door and walked toward the fence calmly. "Evening, officer." He nodded. "Sir. Do you own this property?" "Yes." "And the pool?" "Yes." Officer Daniels looked back at Linda. "Ma'am, were you in his pool?" Linda crossed her arms. "That's not the point." It was absolutely the point. I held up my phone. "I have security footage if you'd like to see it." The officer watched the video. 6 people climbing my fence. Turning on my pool lights. Jumping in. Drinking. Laughing. Clear as day. He sighed. "Ma'am, that's trespassing." Linda's face turned red. "They were investigating." "Investigating what?" he asked. "Possible HOA violations." The officer looked at me. Then at her. Then back at the glowing group. "I'm gonna need you to explain the glowing part," he said. I handed him a printed sheet. It was the product description. Professional pool tracing dye. Non-toxic. FDA approved. Used by plumbers. He read it slowly. Then looked at Linda again. "So, you were trespassing in his pool. And the pool dye marked you." Silence. The neighbors watching from the street started whispering. Someone laughed. Linda looked like she might explode. "This isn't over," she snapped. Officer Daniels shrugged. "Actually, tonight it kind of is." He turned to me. "Sir, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" I looked at Linda. Still glowing. Still furious. Still surrounded by people recording her. I smiled. "Oh, I'm not done yet." The next morning the entire neighborhood was talking about it. Not quietly. Not politely. Loudly. Because by 8 a.m., the videos were everywhere. Someone had uploaded the clip of Linda and her family glowing under the porch light to the Pinewood Heights Facebook group. Within an hour it had 300 comments. Some were confused. Some were curious. But most of them were laughing. One comment read, "Maybe HOA meetings should be held under blacklight now." Another said, "So the HOA president trespasses into people's pools at midnight?" That one got 70 likes. But the best comment came from Mrs. Patel 2 houses down. Interesting how Linda fines people for trash cans visible from the street but thinks breaking into someone's backyard is okay. That comment started a whole thread. People began sharing their own stories. Carlos posted a photo of the $250 Christmas light fine. The Johnson family uploaded screenshots of noise complaints they received for their Sunday afternoon barbecues. Then someone posted something even worse. A photo of a violation notice Linda had sent to an elderly couple for improper lawn edging. The fine? $175. For grass. By the time I poured my second cup of coffee, the neighborhood had officially turned into a digital courtroom. And Linda was losing badly. Around 9:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. New message in the HOA group. Posted by Linda Carver. Emergency HOA meeting tonight at 7 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Mandatory. That word made me laugh. HOA meetings were usually boring. Half the neighborhood never showed up. But tonight? I had a feeling it was going to be packed. And I was right. At 6:50 p.m., the Pinewood Heights Community Center parking lot was overflowing. Cars lined both sides of the street. People stood outside talking in small groups. Phones in hands. Everyone waiting. Inside the building, the air felt thick with tension. About 70 residents squeezed into folding chairs. That was triple the normal turnout. At the front of the room sat the HOA board table. Linda was already there. Still wearing long sleeves despite the warm evening. Probably hiding the faint blue stains that still hadn't completely faded. Her husband Greg sat beside her looking like he hadn't slept. 2 other board members shuffled papers nervously. Then Linda stood up and tapped the microphone. Let's begin. Her voice sounded tight. Controlled. But you could hear the anger underneath. As many of you know, there was an unfortunate incident last night involving dangerous chemicals. The room immediately filled with murmurs. Someone whispered. You mean trespassing? Linda ignored it. A resident in this community deliberately contaminated a swimming pool with chemical dye that harmed my family. I almost laughed out loud. Harmed. Right. She continued. This reckless act puts everyone in Pinewood Heights at risk. Now people were shaking their heads. Mrs. Patel raised her hand. Linda ignored her. Carlos raised his hand. Ignored again. Finally someone in the back shouted. Weren't you in his pool? The room erupted. Linda slammed her hand on the table. Order! The microphone squealed. But the crowd wasn't quiet anymore. People started talking over each other. You climbed his fence. Everyone saw the video. You called the police. Linda's face turned red. That footage was taken illegally. I stood up slowly. Actually, that's when things got interesting. Actually, I said calmly, the cameras are on my property. The room turned toward me. Linda glared. You tampered with your pool to create a trap. I shrugged. I installed professional leak detection dye. It's completely legal. I held up the same printed documentation I had shown the police. Several neighbors leaned forward to look at it. Then Carlos said loudly. So the only reason it affected you is because you were in his pool? More murmurs. Linda looked around the room and realized something terrible. She didn't control the narrative anymore. People weren't afraid to talk. Then Mrs. Patel stood up. A small woman in her 60s. Very polite. Very calm. And absolutely fearless. I have a question, she said. Linda forced a smile. Yes? Mrs. Patel held up a piece of paper. This is the $300 fine you gave me last year for improper garden decorations. She paused. They were religious statues from my family. The room grew quiet. She continued. You told me they lowered property values. A man near the front stood up. It was Mr. Johnson. And you find us for our Sunday barbecue. Another person spoke up. You find me because my mailbox was 2 inches off center. One by one people started talking. Stories. Fines. Letters. Threats. The room turned into a flood of complaints. Linda kept trying to interrupt, but no one listened anymore. Then something unexpected happened. Greg stood up. Her husband. He looked exhausted. Defeated. And strangely relieved. Linda, he said quietly. She turned toward him. What? Greg looked around the room at all the angry neighbors. Then he sighed. Maybe we should just tell the truth. The room went silent. Linda's eyes widened. What are you doing? She whispered. Greg didn't answer her. Instead, he looked directly at the crowd. Linda has been issuing extra fines to cover budget gaps. People exchanged confused looks. What gaps? Someone asked. Greg swallowed. The HOA funds. And suddenly the entire room felt colder. Because everyone realized what he was about to say next. She's been moving money. Linda slammed her chair backward. Greg, stop. But it was too late. Greg looked at the floor and said the one sentence that changed everything. There's about $40,000 missing. The room exploded. People jumped out of their seats. Shouting. Questions flying everywhere. Linda looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under her. And I knew right then. The glowing pool incident? That was only the beginning. For about 10 seconds after Greg spoke, the room was completely silent. Then chaos exploded. People started shouting from every direction. What do you mean missing? $40,000? Where did it go? Linda stood frozen behind the table, her face pale with rage. Greg, sit down, she hissed. But Greg didn't sit. For the first time since I'd moved into Pinewood Heights, he actually looked like someone who had stopped being afraid. He cleared his throat. The HOA landscaping contracts, they were inflated. A man near the back shouted, inflated how? Greg rubbed his forehead. We paid companies that don't exist. That sentence landed like a bomb. Mrs. Patel gasped. Carlos muttered, You've got to be kidding me. Linda slammed her hand on the table again. This is nonsense. But the damage was already spreading. The room buzzed with angry whispers. Fake companies? Where did the money go? Greg looked at Linda. Then back at the crowd. It went to accounts she controls. The room erupted again. People stood up. Someone kicked a chair over. Linda grabbed the microphone. This meeting is over. But no one was listening anymore. Rosa Martinez, a retired school principal who lived at the end of the block, walked calmly to the front of the room. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She simply said one sentence into the microphone. No, Linda. The meeting is just getting started. And somehow that quiet voice carried more authority than Linda's screaming. The crowd slowly settled down. Rosa adjusted the microphone. Let's handle this properly, she said. Then she turned to Greg. Do you have proof? Greg hesitated. Linda leaned close to him and whispered something through clenched teeth. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes. The entire room leaned forward. Greg reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Papers. Bank statements. Printed emails. He placed them on the table. I kept copies. Linda looked like she might actually faint. You had no right, she snapped. Greg ignored her. These are payments from the HOA account over the past 3 years. Rosa flipped through the pages. Her eyes widened. Then she passed them to another board member. In this company, Greg continued, pointing to one line, Green Valley Landscape Services. Someone in the crowd interrupted. I've never seen them. Greg nodded. They don't exist. More gasps. He pointed to another name. Suncrest Maintenance Group. Carlos pulled out his phone and started searching. Nothing, he said after a few seconds. Greg gave a tired smile. Exactly. Rosa looked up slowly. How much money are we talking about? Greg swallowed. $47,000. The room exploded again. People shouted. Some cursed. Mrs. Patel looked genuinely heartbroken. We trusted you, she said softly. Linda snapped. Oh please, don't act like victims. The entire room turned toward her. You people have no idea how hard it is to run this community, she continued angrily. You complain about everything. Carlos stood up. So you stole from us? I managed funds, Linda shot back. Don't twist words. Rosa spoke again, calm and steady. Linda, these documents show payments to fake companies. Linda crossed her arms. Accounting errors. Greg laughed bitterly. Accounting errors don't send money to your personal account. That sentence ended the argument. You could feel the shift in the room. Fear turned into anger. And anger turned into determination. Rosa took a deep breath. All right. She tapped the microphone again. Everyone please listen. The crowd quieted. As of this moment, I'm requesting an official financial audit of the Pinewood Heights HOA. Several residents clapped immediately. Others nodded. Rosa continued. According to our bylaws, if the HOA president is suspected of financial misconduct, residents can call for a removal vote. Now people were paying very close attention. She raised a sheet of paper. We need signatures from at least 50% of homeowners. Someone shouted from the back. You'll get them. Another voice yelled. Where do I sign? Linda looked around the room and realized something terrifying. She had lost control. Completely. Her authority. Her influence. Even her husband. All gone in one night. And it had started with something as simple as pool die. But the night wasn't over yet. Because right then the doors of the community center opened. Two people walked inside. One of them wore a county investigator badge. The other carried a camera. A reporter. The crowd turned toward them. The investigator stepped forward. Good evening. He held up a folder. We received multiple complaints this morning regarding HOA financial fraud. Linda's face went completely white. The investigator looked around the room. Which one of you is Linda Carver? No one spoke. Then about 50 people slowly turned and pointed at her. Linda tried to speak. But nothing came out. The investigator nodded. Ma'am, we're going to need to ask you a few questions. And suddenly the woman who had spent 7 years threatening everyone else with fines looked like she wanted to disappear. The room went completely silent when the investigator asked. Which one of you is Linda Carver? Dozens of people slowly turned and pointed. Right at her. Linda's confident posture disappeared instantly. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked small. The county investigator stepped forward calmly. My name is Daniel Brooks, Maricopa County Financial Crimes Unit. He opened his folder. We received multiple complaints this morning regarding possible misuse of HOA funds. The reporter beside him lifted her camera. The red recording light turned on. Linda noticed it immediately. You can't film this, she snapped. The reporter shrugged. This is a public meeting. Several neighbors nodded. Someone even said, good. Brooks looked at Linda again. Mrs. Carver, we need to ask you a few questions about these financial documents. Linda tried to recover her confidence. These accusations are ridiculous, she said sharply. HOA accounting is complicated. Greg quietly replied from behind her. Not that complicated. A few people in the crowd laughed. Linda shot him a glare that could melt steel. But Greg didn't look scared anymore. If anything, he looked relieved. Brooks walked to the front table and picked up the stack of papers Greg had brought. He flipped through several pages slowly. Then he stopped. "This payment here," he said, pointing at a line. "Green Valley Landscape Services. $12,000. He looked up. "Do you have contact information for this company?" Linda hesitated. "It's a contractor." Brooks typed something on his phone. Then he turned the screen around. "Interesting." The screen showed a business registration search result. "No results found." The crowd murmured again. Brooks flipped to another page. "Suncrest Maintenance Group. $9,000. He typed again. Same result. Nothing. Brooks closed the folder slowly. "Mrs. Carver, these companies appear not to exist." Linda's voice grew louder. "You don't understand HOA management." But people weren't buying it anymore. Mrs. Patel spoke from the second row. "So you find us for small things while stealing thousands?" Linda exploded. "I was protecting property values." Carlos stood up. "You were protecting your bank account." Applause broke out. Brooks raised his hand slightly. "Let's stay calm." Then he turned back to Linda. "Ma'am, we're going to need access to the HOA financial records." Linda crossed her arms. "You'll need a warrant." Brooks didn't look bothered. "That can be arranged." Then Rosa Martinez stood up again, holding a clipboard. "I believe we have another matter to handle first." She raised the paper so everyone could see it. The HOA removal petition. Signatures already filled half the page. In accordance with the Pinewood Heights Charter, Rosa said clearly, "We are calling a vote to remove Linda Carver as HOA president." The room erupted with cheers. Linda slammed her chair back. "This is illegal." Rosa shook her head calmly. "No, Linda. It's democracy." People began lining up immediately. One by one they signed the petition. Carlos. Mrs. Patel. The Johnsons. Dozens more. Even two of Linda's former supporters stepped forward. The reporter's camera captured everything. Linda looked around the room desperately. But no one came to her defense. Within 15 minutes, Rosa counted the signatures. She looked up. "We have 72. The room went quiet. Then Rosa announced the result. "That's more than enough." She placed the paper on the table. "Effective immediately. Linda Carver is removed as president of the Pinewood Heights HOA." The room exploded with applause. Some people even stood up cheering. Linda looked stunned. Her power, gone in a single vote. But then something unexpected happened. Greg spoke again. "There's something else." The room quieted instantly. He opened his briefcase and pulled out another envelope. "These are copies of the bank transfers." He handed them to Investigator Brooks. The money didn't just disappear. Brooks scanned the papers. Then his expression changed. "Mrs. Carver," he said slowly, "these transfers lead to a personal account in your name." Linda's face turned ghost white. The reporter zoomed in with her camera. Brooks closed the folder. "At this point, we're looking at possible charges of financial fraud and embezzlement." The room fell silent. Linda finally snapped. "This is a witch hunt." But her voice sounded weak now. Brooks gestured toward the door. "Mrs. Carver, we'd like you to come with us to answer a few questions." Linda grabbed her purse angrily. "This isn't over." But as she stormed toward the exit, no one moved out of the way quickly. No one apologized. No one looked scared anymore. Because the woman who had ruled the neighborhood with fines and threats for 7 years was walking out the door without any power at all. And it had all started because she decided to steal a midnight swim in someone else's pool. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to Carlos. "Best HOA meeting ever." Carlos grinned. "Worth the pool die." And honestly, it really was. 6 weeks later, The story of Pinewood Heights had spread far beyond our quiet neighborhood. What started as a weird video of glowing neighbors in a backyard pool had turned into something much bigger. Local news stations picked it up first. Then regional media. Eventually, clips of the HOA meeting and the glowing pool incident started circulating online. The internet gave it a nickname: the Glow Pool HOA Scandal. But for the residents of Pinewood Heights, it wasn't entertainment. It was real life. And the consequences were just beginning. The investigation. 2 weeks after that chaotic HOA meeting, county investigators returned with a warrant. They collected every financial record connected to the HOA. Bank statements, contracts, emails, invoices. The more they dug, the worse it looked. Linda hadn't just taken a little extra money. She had created fake landscaping companies, fake maintenance services, fake repair invoices. Over 3 years, she had quietly redirected more than $52,000 from the HOA account into personal bank accounts. The money had paid for things like luxury vacations, car payments, designer furniture, and even part of a down payment on a vacation property. All funded by the neighborhood she claimed to protect. The arrest. The arrest happened early on a Tuesday morning. A sheriff's car pulled up to the Carver house around 7:30 a.m. Several neighbors watched quietly from their windows. By that point, Linda's reputation was already destroyed. But seeing the officers walk her to the car made it real. No more HOA president. No more threatening violation letters. No more control. Just another person being held accountable. She was charged with financial fraud, embezzlement, falsifying HOA records. Greg cooperated fully with investigators. Within days he filed for divorce. After years of silently supporting Linda's decisions, he finally walked away. Most people in the neighborhood didn't blame him. In fact, many felt bad for him. The court case. 3 months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Not just with lawyers and reporters, but with residents from Pinewood Heights. Carlos, Mrs. Patel, the Johnson family. Even Rosa Martinez sat in the front row. The prosecution's case was devastating. They presented bank transfer records, fake contractor invoices, email communications, testimony from HOA residents, and financial analysis showing exactly where the money went. But the most powerful moment came when Greg testified. He explained how Linda had pressured him to sign blank checks. How she controlled every financial decision. How she created fake companies to funnel HOA funds. The defense tried to argue that Linda had simply made accounting mistakes. But the jury didn't buy it. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts. The sentence. The judge didn't hold back. "Mrs. Carver," she said, "you abused a position of trust for personal gain. You used authority to intimidate residents and hide financial misconduct." Then she delivered the sentence. 18 months in county jail. Plus full repayment of the stolen funds. And a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. For the people sitting in that courtroom, it felt like the end of a long nightmare. Life after Linda. 1 year later, Pinewood Heights was a completely different place. Rosa Martinez had become the new HOA president. Unlike Linda, Rosa believed in transparency. Every month, the HOA posted financial reports online. Residents could see exactly where every dollar went. No hidden fines. No fake violations. No intimidation. The stolen money that Linda was forced to repay funded several new projects for the neighborhood. A renovated playground. New street lighting. And a small scholarship fund for local high school students. The atmosphere of the community changed completely. People talked to each other again. Kids played outside. Neighbors hosted real block parties instead of tense HOA meetings. And my pool? My pool became something unexpected. It turned into the unofficial gathering place of the neighborhood. Not for trespassing, but for actual invitations. Summer barbecues, birthday parties, community cookouts. And every time someone jumped into the water, someone inevitably joked, "Make sure you're not glowing afterward." The story had become neighborhood legend. The irony. Looking back, the whole thing still feels surreal. All of it. The glowing skin. The midnight panic. The viral videos. The courtroom drama. But the truth is, none of it would have happened if Linda had simply respected one basic thing: someone else's property. Instead, her arrogance exposed everything. Her trespassing. Her corruption. Her lies. And all it took to start the collapse was something incredibly simple. $30 worth of pool dye. The lesson. People like Linda believe rules only apply to others. They assume power protects them. They assume no one will challenge them. But sometimes the smallest evidence can destroy the biggest lie. In this case, the truth literally glowed in the dark. And once people saw it, there was no hiding anymore.